Greetings and welcome. My name is Kirsten Safford, and today we are going to learn metal repousse, or as I like to call it, metal crafting. But first, a little bit about me. I'm located in Utah, USA, and I've lived here since 2010 when I moved down here from the Great White North, otherwise known as Alaska, where I was raised and lived most of my life mushing dogs and living in an igloo. All right, I didn't live in an igloo. So I've been doing art tutorials on YouTube for 3 years now, and I'm currently selling my art in Kemmerer, Wyoming. And I did graduate from art school in Washington State. I love exploring art, and I'm always trying new things. So if you like this tutorial, please subscribe. It would mean a lot to me, and it would really help me out. And be sure to hit the bell so you're notified when I upload new videos. And if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them below, and I will make sure that I respond to each and every one of them. After my super quick intro, I'm going to show some of my favorite metal crafts that I have created, so you have a chance to see some of the awesome stuff that you can do with metal. So with that, here we go. Okay, did you like what you've seen? I sure hope so. If you want to see more of my creations, you can go to my Kirsten Safford Art Facebook page, where I have all of the pieces I've completed uploaded there. So be sure to check that out as well. Again, that's my Kirsten Safford Art page on Facebook, or you can look me up on Instagram, Kirsten Safford Art. Okay, so what is metal repousse? And I'm just going to call it metal crafting from here on out because I don't like saying that word. It sounds complicated. So it's simple. It's crafting a picture into metal, and it's fun and very rewarding. So to begin, let's talk about the different metals you can use. There's aluminum, copper, silver, and brass. Brass I don't use. I find it is very similar to aluminum in that it's good to use because it's cheap. In fact, if you have a pop can laying around your house, you can cut your pop can open and use the metal from about here to here. You want to just cut a line, cut the circle around each end, and then cut one line up there, and then you'll have a 5x7 piece of aluminum to use. My preferred, I don't use silver either because silver is cost prohibitive. It's way too expensive. So I use copper, and this is a roll that I got from Hobby Lobby. You can see it was $13.99. And it comes in different thicknesses. So this is called soft copper, 0.005 thick, 36 gauge. This is the thickest you can use for metal repousse, but metal crafting. I honestly, I wouldn't use it for doing this. If you can find a thinner gauge, perhaps a 38 or a 40 gauge, I do know that Hobby Lobby does carry it. They carry all the silver, they carry aluminum, and they carry the different coppers. Hobby Lobby is the only place in person I've been able to find it. I know that Michael's does not carry the metal, and then you can get it online as well. So this is what I used for making my art, and it honestly, it is the best because it's easy to manipulate and it doesn't break, because aluminum has a breaking point. If you use it and practice with it, you will notice that it will break. So if you do start working with your copper and you notice that it starts, you've gotten some time into a piece and it breaks, you can take copper tape that you find where they do the stained glass window stuff. I also got this at Hobby Lobby, but I do know they sell it at Michael's and some Walmart stores, and online, of course. So if you do have a break, turn it over to the back side and you can repair it with this. So that's what I would recommend when getting started. But after you've had some practice, you definitely won't need to use this. It will become like second nature. So if you can use coupons, you get an even better deal. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to talk about as far as the metals go. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the different tools. Okay, so when it comes to tools, you can be as simple or as creative as you want to be. There are millions of different tools that you can use. You can use a nail. You could use a butter knife. You could use a fork. You can go to the store and buy tools. Just talk about a few of the different tools here. So these tools are clay sculpting tools. They work really great. You can see, obviously, that I do use these. Look at this is a peg, but I use this a lot. I use it especially when I'm doing my backgrounds. It works really well for that. Another thing that you can do is you can get the little rubber things that go on pencils and you can put them on your tools. It'll make for nicer crafting, a little squishier. I use a lot of Mod Podge tools. They have my favorite set. Oh no, these aren't Mod Podge. These are Mod Podge, I believe. Okay. They're not, but they sell them over in that same section. So what you want to do is you want to go to the aisle at the Hobby Lobby or Michael's and look in the sculpting section where they have the Sculpey and the other baking stuff. And you can find tools. These I bought and I never used them, so I don't recommend them. But these ones here, there should be 3 of them. All right, so these 3 I use all the time, probably on every single one of my creations. You can see that they have the round edge there that's metal, and it's a nice smooth metal. You don't have to do any sanding. Some tools you do need to take a very fine grit sandpaper and sand around the edges and make sure that it is nice and smooth before you get started, or it will scratch your copper. And then the back side has a very hard rubber, silicone, I believe. And I hardly ever use these ends, but I do use these ends all the time. So these 3 will keep here. This I found in the cake decorating aisle. It's for doing lines, and these are in the quilting aisle, and they do cool little dots. This is a bone folder, and it's made of wood, and I use this a lot. We'll keep that out. And these have a very hard tip rubber end, and you can see that I have used them, but I no longer use them. I have moved on. To get started, you might want to try to find something that is rubber tipped just like that. Another bone folder. This one's Recollections, I believe, sold at Michael's. I'm not sure completely. And I do use this. I use this quite often. You can get dental picks and dental tools from Harbor Freight. Very inexpensive. These will work. But really, when it comes down to it, if you could get a simple tool like this, this is all you need to get started. So another thing that I find very useful, you could use the back end of a crochet hook. I bought these. Ideology is a Michael's brand, I believe. I use this all the time now. This is a tool for Cricut, I believe, or Silhouette, for picking up sticky stickers, but it works really well for going back in and doing the detail work. These are super important. I use these all the time. So you find these in the drawing aisle next to the pencils, and I use them for burnishing. And there is a special trick that I use on the copper, and that is Vaseline. So you don't need a lot of Vaseline. I've had this for like 3 years. And you can see I've just barely gotten down to the bottom of it. So you can see how shiny the end is. I just put a little Vaseline on there, and it makes it smooth on the copper. And it works really, really well. And another tool I like to recommend is this tool. I don't know what it's called, but I know you can find it at Hobby Lobby and Michael's, and the ends come off. And I believe you can find it in the woodworking department, also in the Sculpting aisle. So both ends come off, so you can have two different tools on the same tool. And then you can find all these great attachments. Now, I use the brass brush a lot for doing my backgrounds, but you can find rollers, you can find these guys here that do the same as the quilting ones do, only it does multiple dots. You can find chain patterns, and then you can see that these are for a soldering iron, but they also work well. I found a set that it comes with a round one, and this one works really well. You can see that I've used it quite a bit, but you do need to make sure that you check the tool tips before you use them, and make sure that they don't have any little metal sticking out from them, because if they do, it will scratch your copper. So I will go ahead and get the rest of these out of the way, and we will go into some of the other tools that you're going to need. Okay, so the next thing you're going to need are mats, something to work on. Here is a little variety. This is a hard and smooth plastic. This will work. You can't use this side because there is an edge where that paper meets. It has to be completely smooth. This works well because it's very smooth. Or a piece of heavy-duty plastic like comes off of a tote. This works well as well. But what I have found to be the absolute perfect mat is a glass cutting board. So one side is nice and smooth, and the other side is textured. When you're working with this, unless you are trying to get texture into your copper, you want to always use the smooth, flat surface. And you know what? It doesn't hurt to give it a good cleaning before you go ahead and use it. All I'm using right here is a Rely On alcohol pad. I use these all the time for my crafts. Number one reason is because it gets alcohol ink off. It also gets glue. It removes anything sticky. It removes residue of stuff so that you have a perfectly flat, nice, clean piece of glass to work with. You see my puppy in the shadow there, licking the glass. He's helping me clean it, I guess. So what I used was these, and you can buy these in the Walmart. They are $1 for 200, I believe, and I love them because I can just rip it open, use it, throw it away. You can just use plain alcohol on a cloth, but you leave the risk of leaving fuzzies. And fuzzies, well, Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy Wuzzy Fuzzy. Yeah, I know that was dumb. But you don't want anything, nothing, to contaminate your work surface. So the next thing after you have your glass is you're going to need a hard cushion. Now this is a cushion that is not really pliable. Hush. It's not very smushy. So, quiet. Sorry, guys. Okay. So, as I was saying, you want a hard cushion. So this, for example, is 3 pads of paper that I just taped together with duct tape from the dollar store. And it works really well. You can see it's been used. It's got some discoloration on there. Another thing you can use is cardboard. So I wouldn't use where the paper is because there's a line, but if you had some nice plain cardboard, that would also be a good hard cushion. Now, the next thing, if you're using copper, that you're going to want to have is a soft cushion. Now, I have a thick piece of leather that I just put 2 pieces of leather together, taped them together, and then I use this side or this side. It doesn't really matter. But I only use the very thick smushy when I want a nice heavy relief. So if you want something to really pop out at you, you would use that. Or if you have a Silpat, like this is one I got at Walmart in the cake decorating aisle and cut up, but you can use this nice rubber smushy. It's nice and thin, so your depression isn't going to sink too far. You're going to use it on top of your glass, so it's only going to go down as far as your glass. So you can see that that one's pretty thin. Another thing you can use is foam. This is one of those foam stickers. I use the foam side. You can see there's some marks there that this has been used. And here's my old reliable. All this is a piece of suede leather. I use this one on nearly every single one that I have made. You can see that it's actually gotten quite shiny in the center from pushing down into it. But this little piece of leather works perfect. And if you have some leather laying around, an old purse maybe from the thrift store you can cut up. There's lots of different things you can do to make this a less expensive hobby, and I just have found certain ways that I like to do things. So I am cheap, and if it works, then why not use it? You know what I'm saying? So the next thing we're going to go into is the designing of the pattern, and we'll go into that right away. Okay, so as far as the designing goes, you wouldn't want to use a very thick piece of paper. Like this is watercolor paper. It's very thick, and when you put your tool down to it, it's not going to go over and copy onto your copper. So you want to use a thin piece of paper. 20-pound photocopy paper works great. You can photocopy cutout pictures. There's all kinds of ways you can get your designs. You can draw them yourself. That's always my favorite way. Or like this one, for example, is a design that came out of a coloring book. So coloring books, old picture books, just about anything that you want to get your design from. If you have a picture that you want to do, you could blow that up. So there's lots of different ways to do that. So we're going to just pretend here for a minute, pretend with me, that we have taken this tool right here. This is the fine one. And we have gone around, and just like you're drawing with a pencil, you're just going to go around the design onto the copper. But the best way to do it is to use blue painter's tape. And you just want to tape your copper into place onto the glass mat. You want to put one piece on the top, one piece at the bottom, so it doesn't move. And then take your design, make sure that you are completely over where your copper piece is and where your design is, and just tape up top. That way, you're drawing your design and you lose, because this doesn't leave a mark. Maybe you forget where you stopped, so you can lift up your paper and see that's where you stopped. So for today's big adventure, we are going to be doing this design, which I have already scribed onto the piece of copper. I don't know if you can quite see that. I will bring it up close into the camera so we can get a good look. Okay, so all I've done is I've taken the copper, just like I said, taped it down, and then drew the design on there with this, and then taken the paper off. So it left me with this. Okay, so this is going to be our starting point. So from here, I'm going to decide what is up and what is down, and what is going to be the front and what is going to be the back. So this is up and down, and this is going to be the front. So starting out working from the front, once you have your design in, you want to just go back over and smush it down. You can use your thumb. I like to use my thumb a lot when I'm doing these. You could even, in fact, put some Vaseline on your thumb, or some hand sanitizer, just to make going over the design a little easier. You just want to make sure that you get any ripples out, flatten it out nice. Or you can use this and go in and push down. So as you can see, I have taped around the edge of the copper. That way I don't risk cutting myself. Also, when it comes time to painting it, it's going to be a nice sharp edge. And I always do my designs so they will fit into a frame. That's another thing. It is very hard to find frames for these, because when you do relief, you don't necessarily want glass covering your design. So I tend to buy frames, and you know, I look for standard sizes that I can use for that. So you can see the design there. It is like a Celtic knot. Okay, so I'm going to take just a little break. I'll be right back, and we will go into how to do the next step, which is very simple and So to do the relief, you just want to take your smushy and lay it down. And then you're going to take your design, and this was the front, so we're going to turn it over because we want the recess to come out, to pop at us. So we'll just take that. You don't need to tape it down, but you can if you want. I'm going to real quick, just for ease. And I'm just going to tape it to the leather, not the glass. Because I know that the leather won't move around on me. Okay, so then you can take your tools. Now, if you listened to me and you went and got this tool, you could use this and very easily go around and push that design down. If you don't have that, you take this, put a little bit of Vaseline on it so that it's able to move nice and smoothly, and you can push it out using this. So it's very simple. I'll show you how that worked out. And it just pops that out to the front. I'm going to go ahead and do the whole thing, and then I will show you what the next step is. Okay, so I have gone around the entire thing. I'll just take that off there. And you can see that it's pushed out. But we're not done here. Now we're going to turn it around on the front side on the glass. This is very important. You want it to have a nice hard structure underneath. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to go around the whole design, being careful not to go on top of it. And we're just going to edge it. And we'll edge it down. And then you can go back in with this tool and make sure you get nice and tight to the edges and make your lines nice and crisp. I do recommend using this to go over the whole thing one time, and then I recommend going around the entire design with this. And what it will do is it will make your lines look nice and crisp and sharp. Like this one. I don't know if you can tell who this is. Some of you might know. But I did this one this morning while I was at work. Yes, I said that. I have a really cool job where I can work on my crafts while I get paid to do a job for someone else. So this is an example of what it looks like when your lines are nice and crisp. So you can see that I have gone around and edged very nicely around the figure, but then left the edges on the inside where his clothing is and his face. I've left that soft to give a different appearance. And that's just one of those things that as you do this and as you practice, you'll learn and you will get better at. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this one up, and then I will come back. See, you can even do it with your finger. So I will come back as soon as I get this done, and we'll learn how to do backgrounds. Okay. Okay, so now you can see I've gone around the whole design, and hopefully I didn't miss any spots because this was a tricky pattern actually. The round curves and such. I recommend when you get started doing this that you start with a very, very simple design and go from there. Now the next step is the relief in the background. I want that to be all flat. So here is where this comes in handy. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to push the background down all the way around. Anywhere that should be in the background is going to get pushed down and flat. So you can see that the relief is different on the section that we just did there. Okay, where as opposed to right here where it bubbles out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that really quick. Okay, so I've gone ahead and gone around the inside and the outside, and you can see that the back is now flat and the front is pushed out some. Now, one of the things that you want to think about when doing this is working from the very center out, because what you're doing essentially is stretching the copper and making the copper move, and when it moves it's going to twist and it's going to come up, and you really want to have, when you're done, you really want to have your piece be nice and flat. So one of the things that I do is I make sure that when I do my background that the design itself really pops out and is really nice. And let's talk a little bit about backgrounds. So one of the things that you can do for the background, which is what we'll do for this one, is you can take this wire brush. There's all kinds of wire brushes you can buy at like the dollar store even, I believe. But the brass wire brush works best because it will scratch the copper, but it won't ruin the copper. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go anywhere that is in the background. We're going to rough it up. And I'm going to go around the whole thing. And this sound is awful. It drives my dogs nuts. And then I'm going to do the back on this section too, all the way around. So you can see it's making a nice brushed finish, which when we paint it later will really make the front stand out quite a bit. But there are lots of different things that you can use for backgrounds. One of my favorite things of all time are these little envelopes. And it's very easy to use. All you do is, for instance, you take whichever side you want to be popped up or popped down. You work on the side that's the relief. So the side that goes into it, that pops out on this, is not the side you want to use. You want to use the side that has the relief and the holes in it. And I will show you some examples I have made here. So you can use these with the copper. It works really well. You can see that's the polka dot one I was just showing you. But front or back, depending on which way you want the relief to go. But for this one, we're going to stick with the wire brush. I'm going to go ahead and get that detailing done, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so I thought I would show you another one that I got done at work today. And this one I used the background, the swirly background. So you can see how you do a nice outline, and then you can work your background. And you can see that I did some backwards relief on the stick, because when I go to color it in, the color will set into this. Or maybe this will be the front and the color will fall off of this. Either way, I'm not quite sure. Not yet. But you can see how nice it looks. Once it's painted, it will look even better. It's amazing how they look from before they're painted to the point where they are painted. I have one I can show you. It's one that you'll see later in the video, but I'll show you the front so you can see what it looks like when it's before it's painted. It just doesn't have life, but once it's been painted, it just comes to life. So I saved that just to show you the difference it creates. It just brings it to life using the alcohol inks. Okay, so I will get the design that we're working on, and we'll start painting. Okay, so there it is. I've gone ahead and scratched all around it and made sure it was nice and flat. Now the next step before you can paint it is you need to clean it really well, and for that I recommend using the Rely On alcohol swab wipes. What you want to do is make sure you get it down to the bare metal, that you don't have any fingerprints, you don't have any leftover Vaseline, and you will be able to tell once it's clean and ready to be painted, because when you take your Rely On strips off, they won't have any more gunk on it. So when you get it clean enough, it will be white. So you probably go through 2 or 3 of these before you get your metal clean enough to paint. So that's the next step. I'll get this all cleaned up really nice, and then I'll take you through the process I use for painting. Now this whole project, this is just how I do it. You know, you might watch a video of someone else doing it and they might tell you to do something completely different than what I said. So take that with a grain of salt, but I have been doing this for quite a long time and I do think that I'm pretty good at it. So that's why I wanted to share. All right. Okay, so when it comes to painting these, really you just want to make sure that the surface that you're using is super clean. You can take some alcohol, just regular old alcohol, and a paper towel and go over your design. To make sure it's absolutely clean and free of any debris. So just like that. See how much shinier it is once you get all that off, all the gunk. Okay, just let that dry. And then for painting, you can use any alcohol-based marker or anything like that. So I used alcohol-based markers for the pig. This is one I was working on at work today, but I decided I didn't like it, so I was taking off the color, which is another cool trick that you can do. If you don't like the way something looks, you can always wash it off and start over. So that one can be cleaned up better later. So what we're going to do is just a plain, simple black background. And to do that, you can draw directly on, however you want. And then you're going to take and let it dry a little bit. And you can go into it and use a dry paper towel and rub it in. Or what I like to do is to use these watercolor brushes and get on my glass, because this will come off with rubbing alcohol. See, it comes right off. Now those of you who use the alcohol inks that are liquid, go ahead and use that and paint it just like you would however you want to paint it. But for this, so it's a watercolor paintbrush, but I filled it with rubbing alcohol, the 91%. And I'm just going to get it nice and wet here. And the good thing is you can just keep coming back and getting it wet. And then you can come in and dab your color on. Now, I don't generally like to use the black Sharpies because they turn out a purple color, but I do have some nice black that I can use on this. You can put it on however thick you want it. Go back, take it off. You can paint around the design. I like to let it dry a little bit and then go over it with a paper towel and just kind of rub the black ink into the indentions. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I will come right back with you. Okay, so I feel like I have painted it sufficiently. I've made it look old, and as soon as it's done drying, I will shellac it, and I will show you how I do that so that the paint doesn't run. But one of the things, I'm going to take this little pig here and show you, is that, I don't know if you can see it, but I have put glue on the back side where the relief is. You can see some of the spots where it's still not quite dry yet, right there and right there, some of the deeper wells. And if the relief is too big, because you don't put a glass over the top of this when you're finished, what you want to do is you want to have it exposed. But if it's exposed, what happens if somebody bumps it? Well, if somebody bumps it and it's been glued, then it will hold its shape. And if it's too deep, you want to put multiple layers of glue and let it dry. And the curing process for that is really takes the most amount of time when working with the copper. Let's see if it's dry. We'll take this over to where I do my painting with lacquer, and we will spray it, and then we'll be finished. Alright, so welcome to my studio. As you can see, this is a spot where I have done plenty of painting. So what I like to do is I like to lift my pieces up and put them on a rack for spraying. And then the spray that I use is this Oleum specialty lacquer. It makes a very high luster coating. But there is a trick to using this. And one of those tricks is to very lightly dust the top. Let it dry. Dust the top. Let it dry. You do this 2 or 3 more times, then the paint is actually sticking to, or the sealant is actually sticking to the paint. And then you can go in and do a nice thick, heavy coating. I like to do this in many stages. And I don't let it completely dry in between. I let it it is like 100 degrees in my shop, so now if you spray this too soon, or if you don't have a good enough dusting coat, that's what the first coatings are, dustings. Anyways, if you don't have a good dusting coat, it will bleed and your colors will fade away completely. And I've noticed that with the reds and the oranges that they tend to disappear. But for this look, what I'm going for is an older rustic look. So that's okay if it does that. It just gives it more character, and I'm not about perfection. So thank you so very much. And thank you guys so very much. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button. And there's plenty of tricks I haven't shown you yet that's up my sleeve. So, oh wait, I don't have sleeves. But nonetheless, I still have tricks to share. So stay tuned and have a great night. I hope you learned something, and please leave comments and questions and I will answer them. Thanks everyone.